Welcome to Let's Be Clear. I'm your host, Robin Michelle. I'm so happy to have you here today. So, in this first, I wouldn't even call this an episode. I really wanted to just have an introductory moment, just describe what Let's Be Clear is about, why this podcast, why now. And so the best way that I feel that I can discuss what Let's Be Clear is by first discussing what it's not. This is not one of those podcasts where it's about come and get all this advice because I'm an expert. I am an expert in nothing. I'm not an expert in relationships. I am single. There is no one outside of my window with a boombox in the rain. And while that is very unfortunate, it is very true. So I can just discuss dating as it relates to me. I am a single mom, but I am no expert in parenting. I have no clue why God allowed me to have a child. I have no clue how we got to 15 years. But here we are, and I can just discuss the highs and the lows of parenting as it pertains to my life as a single mom. I'm no expert in business. I'm no expert in things of God. I just love him a lot. And we're on this journey and we're taking this walk day by day. So I wanted to get that out of the way first because, some people, when they see you as an expert, if you say one thing that doesn't work for them, then they're gone. And for me, this is more of a space of take what you need. You ever see those things? Sometimes they'll be up in an office or they'll be on a bulletin at a grocery store. A little take what you need. You just pull the little piece of paper. So it might be joy, it might be laughter, it might be a little bit of advice, it might be just a space where you can just feel seen, right? Like I love what she's saying. I love the place she talks about it from. And that resonates most with where I'm at. Take what you need. I'm very passionate. I know that God has given me wisdom that he wants me to share. So let me share how I even came to agree to do this podcast. And I have to say agree because this can only be God. I hit a point around 2019 where God just had me on this crazy journey, and he encouraged me to quit my job at the time. And it was very unexpected. Nothing that I won't say it was completely unexpected. I knew that a pending exit would come one day. It just didn't make sense in that season. Everything was starting to go really good at work. Everything was smooth. A lot of the kinks that I was experiencing once before were no longer there. And then all of a sudden, God tapped me on my shoulder, just like, yeah, now. And I couldn't understand it. I didn't have anything planned. Again, I'm a single mother. I didn't have a savings. I didn't have anything lined up, but I trusted him to leave when he said go. And so I did that. After that time, let's say that was towards of like the end of 2019, I really spent some time with him and just got silent. So in that silence, it was really me just trying to understand, what do you want me to do now? I had no clue. I had someone in my life at the time that kept saying, you need to go live. You need to share your story. You need to talk about how you could quit such a big job and people want to hear your story. And I would keep telling her, no, it's not time yet. And so that's what she was doing at the time. She was live every day. And that was happy for her. But it wasn't for me. And so one thing about me, you're not going to push me to do anything that's not right for me. And sometimes while you know that people would have received the conversation in that moment, in that time, because it was a hot topic, I just knew that he wouldn't get the glory if I started talking about it at that time. So I'd rather remain silent. And if I'm being really honest, I wasn't okay. Like, I didn't know what he wanted to do. I'm literally out here trusting him. I just knew that he would tell me to quit and walk me directly into another opportunity that was equal to or better. He did not. I repeat, he did not. He literally was like, sit right here. And so what would I have been sharing? Hey, let me give you the 5 steps of how I trusted God to quit my job. And then what? I was not okay. I was in the corner rocking. And that's a real thing, because on the other side of doing this radical move, that God is asking you to do. It could be quitting a job. It could be moving to another state. It could be exiting a relationship. It could be exiting a church. On the other side of that radical obedience, you're not okay. Check on your strong, radical faith friends. They are not well. I don't care what they tell you, they're not okay. And so, in that space and time, it was really me needing to get silent. It wasn't about me talking, it was about me needing to get silent, to hear him, to draw near to him. And really and truly, I needed to know who I was outside of that role, because a lot of my identity was attached to it. And I understood that there was an undoing phase that we had to go through. And so that's where we were. Also, right after that time, the pandemic hit, which was the top of 2020. And I don't know if y'all remember, but I feel like I'm still going through PTSD. But when you went on Instagram at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was live. As soon as you opened Instagram, it was live, live, live. Everybody was an expert. Everybody was sharing their devotional every single day. People was writing devotionals. And I'm not trying to throw any shade. I hope this doesn't trigger you if this is you. But everyone had something to say and no one knew how to be silent. And so for me, I even more so felt like just hold your position, be quiet, and let's just see what's happening. So fast forward, I moved. I literally moved. So I lived in New Jersey for most of my life. He then called me to move down south. Moved me to, I won't call it a strange, distant land. It just didn't make sense to who I was. It didn't make sense to my industry. My industry wasn't where he moved me to. Nothing made sense. So even more, I'm further out in the deep end with him, having no clue what we're doing. Instead of taking me to the next biggest job opportunity, like I thought he owed me from being obedient, he then was like, nah, come on out further with me and sit and be quiet. And so that's just where I was. And what's crazy is during that time, I had so many people patting me on the back. Robin, I just love the way you trust God. Your faith is amazing. They didn't know deep down inside I wasn't okay. I'm punching the air. I had that one lone tear coming down the side of my face like Michael Jordan. Like I wasn't well, but I was in the process with him. I was in this walk with him. And the flip side to it was when I felt like it was time to start sharing and talking, I couldn't. The enemy had got a hold of me and basically was whispering in my ear that at this point, you're no longer relevant. No one wants to hear what you have to say. Remain silent. And that they only cared to listen when it was attached to this celebrity or this opportunity. And I started to believe it. And so I then became mute. So there was one season where the silence was good. And then there was another season that I was then in where the silence was bad and I didn't know how to overcome it. And God being God was just like, yeah, let's talk now. Let's talk now. And the funny thing about God is when he's directing you to do something, he will not let up. He will constantly nag you. He will literally not let your spirit rest until you obey him. So whether it's that constant nudge every day that I know I'm supposed to be doing something that I haven't yet done, he might be sending a word through another person who either knows you and is speaking that life back into you, or a random stranger who's like, do you have a channel or something? I want to hear you talk. Or I'm at the grocery store. I'm bumping into people. How are we now holding hands and praying? How am I at the furniture store talking to someone about finding their identity? And we're literally discussing furniture. He will constantly find a way to let you know where he's at and where he needs you to join him. And so it got to the point where I didn't want to ask him for another thing. I didn't want to need him in another area until I finally obeyed. And it didn't make sense because I was like, a podcast, it takes forever for it to be profitable. And so at some point he just let me know that the profit is in your obedience. So for me, the outcome isn't tied to how many subscribers, how many people download. And yeah, you're going to get those instructions along the way. I would appreciate that you do it. But I don't really have an end goal here outside of obedience, literally one step at a time, one episode at a time. If he tells me after recording this, wrap it up, then all I want is a job well done, good and faithful servant. If that's all this was about, if all of this was just trust me in this, will you obey me and trust me in this? And I gave him a yes, then I've served my purpose. And this was the most successful thing I've done till this date, you know? And so that's why this podcast came about. And so really the only way I can give him a yes is if he's leading me in this. And thus far, he's been doing his thing. So I'm happy to invite you in. Welcome to the family. I am in my living room right now. I don't know where you're at. I don't know if you're listening to an audio version of this, if you're watching me while I'm on my sofa, but if you're on the audio, I am in my living room. I'm on my big blue sofa. I am very comfy here. I'm in a space that God and I curated together, and I couldn't find a better place to start having these conversations and to start being obedient, aside from the fact that there was no budget for a podcast studio rental. But nevertheless, I love my sofa. I'm happy to chat with y'all, and let's be clear.